What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the show. So last year, all throughout 2018, we had somewhat of a phenomenon going on, somewhat of an epidemic. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of what I'm talking about, but I don't think everyone is necessarily aware of how serious and how dangerous it is. And I'm referring to the seemingly exponential amount of white people calling the police on black people for no damn reason. So again, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of these situations, seen them in the news, saw them on social media. We had the two black men in Starbucks who were put in cuffs and escorted out by police when they were just waiting for a friend or waiting for another associate. We had a white man call the police on a black man in Georgia who was babysitting two white children because in his mind it just didn't sit well with him, it didn't look right, so he decided to call the police. We had Barbecue Becky in Oakland, California. She called the police on a group of black people who were just barbecuing in a public park. A black college student fell asleep in the dorm common room and a white student called the police on them. In Southern California, I'm not too sure if a lot of people are aware of this one, but actually the granddaughter of Bob Marley, she was leaving an Airbnb with a group of friends. They were getting their luggage out of the Airbnb, and a white neighbor across the street or down the block felt that they were burglarizing the home and decided to call the police. And then we had Permit Patty, who called the police on a black girl for selling water on the sidewalk. We had, and not necessarily just people calling the police on black people, but just harassing black people for no reason. We had Hallway Hillary, who wasn't allowing a black resident to enter their condominium, their apartment building. She just felt that he didn't actually live there. So we had situations where they were asking for IDs and, oh, let me see your key fob. Let me see that you actually live here. I don't believe that you live here. I've never seen you before. Situations like that. And then we had the young black kid, I believe he was 9 years old, in Brooklyn, New York, where a white woman said that he sexually assaulted her in a corner store. And the reason that these situations are so serious and need to be taken more serious by black people and white people, and by all people, is that these scenarios, specifically the black kid in Brooklyn with the alleged sexual assault, is so eerily reminiscent of the Emmett Till situation. For those who don't know, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old black boy from Chicago visiting family in Mississippi, and he was in a grocery store, and then one of the daughters of the families, the owners of the grocery store, said that Emmett Till was flirting with her, and 4 days later he was lynched by a mob of white people. And that is just something that could easily happen again, especially in this day and age. We see what happens when white police officers encounter black people in the streets, and history is just not on our side for those situations to end well. So as I looked back at all these scenarios, I came across a video of D.L. Hughley. He was on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and he said something, and I heard him say this before, but I really didn't truly understand until I was looking at all of these scenarios. So it kind of came full circle for me, and it made sense finally. He said the most dangerous place for black people to live is in white people's imagination, because it's never the actual black guy, that you walk by on the street. It's the black guy in Chicago, the black guy you saw on the news. And he joked like, "Oh, I'm afraid of that dude too. I hope I never come in touch with him either," because it's this idea of us, and there's an idea of black people that's much more frightening and impactful than the actual black person. And he went on to use the Trump and Obama situation, the birther situation, as an example, because everything that Trump was saying about Obama was absolutely false. He doesn't love America. He's not from here. He doesn't have his birth certificate. Yada yada. All these things that he was just saying, and he was perpetuating this image and this idea of Barack Obama, and ignorant white folk went along with it and ran with it and believed it. So again, it was just an idea of us that was perpetuated, that was then believed by other people. And then when it was found out that, of course, what we already knew, Obama wasn't actually a Muslim or a terrorist, and he does have a birth certificate, Donald Trump still then couldn't even apologize for it and admit that he was wrong. And other people who, followed him and believed him also wouldn't apologize and admit that they were wrong for having believed it. And that also reminds me of a scenario also involving Donald Trump. back in the mid-90s, I believe. Some of you might know this or remember this. There was a scenario of the Central Park Five. It was 4 black teens and 1, I think, Hispanic teen who were accused of raping a teenage white girl. And Donald Trump believed it so much so that he even spent his own money and took out an ad in like the New York Times or some newspaper or whatever to put an ad in the newspaper to demand that these 5 black and brown teens be sentenced to death for this, because it was just this image that was perpetuated in the news and in the media by about black kids and about black teens that was then put on these 5 young teens, and then people started to believe it. And then it came out that they weren't even the ones that I believe the entire story was false. I don't even think the girl was actually raped. I would have to look back and get the actual facts, but nonetheless, these 5 black and brown teens weren't even the ones that did it. And also in the mid-90s, they started to use this term. There's actually a documentary on Netflix called The 13th, talking about the 13th Amendment and the incarceration rate. And they talk about this in that documentary, where back in the 90s, around that same time, they were using this term, the super predator. And they were just, every news outlet was using that. Everybody was saying the term super predator, and it stuck, it caught on. Citizens were then using it, and again, it was painted across all black people, and that's what happens, or that is what leads to then white people in the streets calling the police for no reason, harassing black people for no reason, and it's a very dangerous situation. Now, I've never said that my videos or this channel is just for black people or any specific group of people, but I will say in this instance that this video is for white people. Like the title says, put down the phone. You're wasting your time, you're wasting the police's time, you're wasting tax dollars, you end up looking foolish, you might possibly lose your job. I'm pretty sure the hallway Hillary lady lost her job. I think she was a real estate agent but got fired after her whole scenario went viral on social media. And I don't think they quite understand that calling the police for these reasons is a form of racism and oppression. And it ties back into the past video I've done of can black people be racist or not, because in that video I said it's not just racism to just hate somebody of another race. It's not truly racism until it affects somebody and oppresses somebody's life, until it alters somebody else's life. So again, just like when I talked about white people applying for loans, or any of those type of situations where for black people it ends differently, it's the same thing in these scenarios. If the roles are reversed and black people call the police on white people for seemingly no reason, history doesn't show that it's going to end well for, or that it's going to end badly for white people. But in our case, white people calling the police on black people more often than not does not have a good result, does not have a good ending. As far as a solution, I might not be a lawmaker or legislature, so I don't exactly know all the steps in the entire process when it comes to making laws, but I absolutely feel that states should start enacting laws and creating laws that heavily fine people for calling the police for no reason. Because again, you're wasting the police's time, you're wasting tax dollars, and there has to be a consequence for these situations, because if not, then they'll just keep going on. They'll just keep happening. White people will keep calling the police for no reason, and history will just keep repeating itself. So there has to be something in place that'll make that white person think twice before they call the police. So, I don't know if it's going to be $1,000 fine, or I don't know, charge them with filing a false report, something like that. I'm not sure exactly how it would work, but there has to be something. Something needs to be put in place. We need to start seeing states doing this, creating laws, so that way it can start deterring some of these calls that we know have been made for no reason, and we know that they were called by a white person who is just having this irrational fear of a black person who's not doing anything wrong. And for those who know me and you know what my full-time job is, you know that I deal with the police on a very consistent basis. So to any police officers possibly watching this, you should be thankful and agreeing with me for this video as well, because you guys, the amount of calls that you receive in a day is ridiculous, and I know that possibly 50% of them aren't even real emergencies. That's why there is a non-emergency line. It exists for that reason, because it's to deter some of those calls that aren't really that, they aren't. It isn't a true exigent circumstance. So it's to deter some of those calls. That way, the real emergencies, like people's lives on the line, can actually get dispatched to an officer, and an officer can then respond to the scene. So again, to any police officer, I think to all police officers all across the nation should be agreeing that these calls have to stop. And I've seen some of these videos where a cop does show up, it was a white person calling the police for whatever stupid reason, harassing a black person, and the cop actually sided with the black person and told that white person who was the one that called it in, and told them that they're wrong, and told them that they're wasting time, and that they're being irrational, and that there was nothing being done wrong. So I applaud those police officers who had been in these situations, called for these ridiculous reasons, and then show up to the scene, and they do the right thing. They tell the person who called that it was for, it wasn't for a right reason. There was nothing illegal going wrong. There was no illegality to the actions of the black person. And we need more of that. We need more of that in this country. We need to see it a lot more often, because again, these scenarios could always, or not always, but they can more often than not end up very badly for black people. So all in all, my main message truly is to white people, and it is to just leave black people alone. When you know they're not doing anything wrong, they're not breaking any laws, they're not hurting anybody, not bothering anybody. And I feel as if white people start to realize the foolishness of their actions when they call the police for no reason, and if they finally stop doing this, then it can solve a lot of problems. And to all my black people out there, just keep doing you, because like Issa Rae said, I'm rooting for everybody black. Thanks for watching.